This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
Joining me now is John Brummett, columnist with the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. John Brummett, good to be with you at the beginning of a short week here as we had a little relaxing Labor Day weekend. Did you have a relaxing Labor Day weekend?
I watched a lot of college football and a lot of professional tennis and cooked that a little bit. So it was a good weekend. It was fine.
Doesn't get much more relaxing than that. So
it's fairly relaxing. Yeah.
You picked back up on your Arkansas football tweeting there in the Rice game, and we have Texas this week. You care to give all your college football Twitter fans a little preview?
Well, no, they got to save it for the live tweeting. But I've got this thing worked out where, and I've admitted this to you and to all of our listeners, that it's a defense mechanism as a lifelong Razorback fan. When they're doing poorly, as they have done in recent years, I satisfy myself by making fun of them. And then when they're doing well, I celebrate. I jump in front of that bandwagon. Saturday's game gave me the best of both opportunities. The first half was just miserable. The second half was successful. So I got to go both ways. It's just something that I do that I'm actually thinking about stopping doing. I'm sort of trolling Razorback fans when I get critical of the Hogs, and some of them are getting rather vulgar and mean in their responses. So I may give them a week or two off. I'm going to try to go through the Texas game without any live tweeting. We'll see if we make it.
I doubt that you'll be able to do that, but I will say this. You got to be encouraging when you tweet. It's Texas. I mean, they might need you to lift them up a little bit, not be snarky about it.
As I say, I only respond to what I see on the field. And that was a pretty miserable first half against Rice, but it was more like a solid emerging football team in the second. I'm all for them. But I will say one more thing. As a fellow my age who endured the 60s and Arkansas-Texas rivalry in the Southwest Conference with national titles at stake and 1-point games and great drama, and just a religious obsession on Texas Week in Arkansas, which was always mid-October, the fifth game, it's not the same anymore. There have been many generational changes, and this is Texas Week, but it's not a real Texas Week in the sense of the way it once was.
It's University.
Which makes sense.
It's University of Missouri for you now. That's your big rivalry game, isn't it?
Saturday, I thought for a while Rice was our big rival.
All right, let's talk about Texas in a political context here. An abortion law in Texas withstands some immediate scrutiny from the Supreme Court of the United States. There was not an injunction to prevent it from going into effect. Tell listeners and viewers a little bit about what the Texas law does, how it's different from other abortion restriction laws that we've seen.
The Texas law, in one sense, is sort of Jason Rapert-like. And he tried a portion of this in Arkansas. It would outlaw abortion after detection of a heartbeat, which is as early as 6 weeks before women sometimes know that they are pregnant. And it also allows no exemption for rape or incest. So it's standard Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, Oklahoma fare in terms of anti-abortion. The difference here is something apparently cooked up by a law clerk to the late Antonin Scalia, in which the state does not assign to itself in this law any criminal enforcement authority. It merely authorizes Texans to bring lawsuits if they suspect, have reason to believe, if they seek to allege that a provider has performed an abortion prior to or after the detection of a heartbeat, and they can bring litigation. And then if they succeed, the state will pay them $10,000. If they lose, the providers cannot collect attorney's fees. So it's trickery. It's a trickery template for the nation. Any kind of law, it's cooked up by these smart legal minds, conservative legal minds, and the Supreme Court, the five most conservative justices said, in terms of an emergency injunction against this, we have never encountered this before, so we don't know how to rule on it. They said that in a quick called shadow docket confab last Wednesday night. And to me, that means, okay, you don't know what to do with it. All the more reason to grant an injunction enjoining its enforcement until you know what to do with it. Quite the contrary, those five said, go ahead, essentially shutting down abortion in Texas on a trickery, on a system of trickery, and on a law that they said may in fact be unconstitutional. So it's the whole Roe v. Wade thing is yet to be fought out in terms of its merit and in terms of the actual central case. This to me is a procedural affront to simply say this is such a good trick, we don't think we can stop it. Well, the Supreme Court could stop it if they wanted to, but those five conservative justices did not. So we essentially have abortion basically out of business in Texas, based on this terroristic threatening of lawsuits if some Uber driver thinks the person he's taking to a clinic is getting an abortion. And Jason Rayford already saying, we're going to do it. I'm going to do this here in Arkansas. You've got other states saying they're going to do it. And I read this morning, somebody said this is a right-wing template for the nation, or it could be a left-wing template if they were in charge of any states, for gun control, gun laws, for example. Anything. You could say, we're not going to have the state do the enforcement. We're simply going to let people sue and we'll reimburse them if they win. So it's an extraordinary procedural sleight of hand that regrettably our Supreme Court has let go, has let proceed, at least on an interim basis.
You mentioned Senator Jason Rayford. He's a candidate for lieutenant governor in the state of Arkansas. There's a new entrant in the GOP field for lieutenant governor early this week. Chris Beckett says he is running. Says that Jason Rayford's a 30% Republican at best, which I feel like we will be hearing some sort of refutation from the Rayford campaign on that. Where are we headed with Republican politics in 2022?
I was thinking about that this morning when you emailed me a copy of the news release from this Chris Beckett running for lieutenant governor because Doyle Webb, the former Republican chairman, and Jason Rayford, the famously right-wing state senator, he says are largely represent are insufficient Republicans. They're not really conservative because they haven't eliminated taxes. They let Medicaid expansion go through. They haven't cleaned up the anti-Americanism in our public schools, all these sorts of things. And then I've thought about this: Chris Beckett, and then Jake Beckett, and then Tom Cotton, and Jan Morgan. And here's the Arkansas political spectrum now. The extreme right would be this Beckett and the other Beckett running for the Senate, and Jan Morgan and people like that. The center, apparently, is Jason Rayford. Can you imagine that? Jason Rayford is the center of on the Arkansas political spectrum. And the left, I remember in the early 2000s, Jim Hendren was the right-wing extreme of Arkansas. He's now the left wing of Arkansas through his Common Ground, proposing sort of independent, nonpartisan positions in solving problems rather than adhering to a strict right-wing ideology. Anybody to the left of Jim Hendren is basically gone off the cliff. So I'm off the cliff. Much of Little Rock and Fayetteville off the cliff. That's where Arkansas politics is right now. That's where the debate is now being had totally in Republican primaries. And it's people primarying not the Asa Hutchinson types, but the Jason Rayford types, because they've been in state government and haven't torn it up as much as they think they should. This is where we are.
So let's turn our attention to Sarah Huckabee Sanders. She started her Freedom Tour, as she calls it, this past week. And she says, basically, yeah, I'm nationalizing the race, and it needs to be nationalized. This may be good politics now. How's that going to be for a governing style if she's elected, as some presume?
Oh, Roby, I almost don't even want to talk about this because it's the same old story, but I'll tell it again because she keeps reinforcing the point. Uh, she is running for governor of Arkansas by avoiding Arkansas issues, by avoiding Arkansas accountability to the Arkansas media. And yet she is such a cynical, effective political operative that she and her campaign are playing the Arkansas media and the Arkansas people like dollar store fiddles. And that's just what's going. She wouldn't come on yours and Channel 7's town hall meeting on education. She wouldn't come on with Leslie Rutledge to take your questions and talk about Arkansas education in specific context. She wouldn't do that. All she'd done on education, so far as I could tell, was a tweet that we've got to stop these socialists and liberals from telling our kids in school that America is evil. That's that straw man about critical race theory and the 1619 project, which no history teacher in Arkansas would dare touch, and they don't. It's a total straw man of an issue. Yet here she pulls this effective campaign tactic of a freedom tour around the state, and she opens it up down in Raleigh. That's close enough for a local TV station to send a reporter down for a 15-second soundbite, and she produces a soundbite, gets on the local news saying education must be our priority in Arkansas, and it will be mine as governor because the trajectory of our education in Arkansas is not good. So here, she played that. She's writing her own script. And it's probably going to work. And yes, she says, yes, I'm nationalizing it, because if you're not paying attention, if you don't think the great threat to Arkansas is national issues, even if you agree, as I do, that the left flank of the Democratic Party is impractical and needs to be resisted, Arkansas is doing everything within its power to resist it, with all 6 members of our congressional delegation Trumpites resisting it. Those are the people in charge with doing that, with giving twice now more than 60% of its presidential vote to Trump, and they're going to give it to him again in 2 more years when he's likely to get back in office because Joe Biden and the Democrats are going to gift wrap it for him. Meantime, Asa Hutchinson is doing a specific job to Arkansas that she's going to have to be doing without telling us in any remote sense anything to give us comfort, if we seek it, about what she thinks about these issues and how she's going to proceed. But she does manipulate the entire dialogue. And it's her old college professor, political science professor, Hal Bass, told me months ago, a couple years ago, that Sarah is a superb political animal, superb political athlete, a superb political athlete. And we're seeing that, and we're all being played by it.
Give John Brummett a weekend to rest up, and he will bring the heat on a first of the week Tuesday here. Thank you so much for being with us.
Well, I'm sorry if I got too worked up, but that's the way it goes on Tuesday.
My job is to get you worked up, John Brummett. That is the whole.
All right. Take care.
All right. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm Roby Brock. We will see you next time.